All right, it's Monday, a lot to get through. Joining me now, Shanahan, as he does, National Editor for The Australian every Monday. We'll start with the two polls out today if we can. The first, of course, is the most watched, that's Newspoll. It's got Labor trailing the coalition by 5 points there. We saw it on primary. Now, this is settling into a bit of a trend. The coalition has been leading on primary for the past 6 months. On two-party preferred, that gap has narrowed down to just 2 points, 51-49 to the government. Meanwhile, the latest Resolve political monitor, that's another poll, there has the coalition widening their vote lead over Labor and Peta Credlin gaining ground as preferred Prime Minister. Well, Dennis, give us some of your observations on these two polls.
Peter, it is clear that there is an incremental trend, but it is favouring the coalition on primary vote. Labor, not only do we have the Newspoll and Resolve, we had previously the Freshwater poll, also showing Labor at a record low primary vote. So Labor is in trouble on the primary vote. And of course, this is going to be so important when it comes to the next election because it was elected with a record low primary vote. If that's any lower, then it's all going to be decided on preferences and it's going to make majority government very difficult. But the other thing about all of these polls, and the Newspoll shows it today as well as the Resolve poll, is that while people are reluctant to make big moves as far as the parties are concerned, it's all, within the margin of error. It's a little bit. It is a trend slightly towards the coalition. But what they are saying, people are saying that they are not liking what they see about the government's economic management. They do not like what they're seeing about cost of living. And what they are saying is, and this has been the case for a long time, they can't afford a large shock. That isn't a surprise bill, a dog going to the vet for an operation, a car accident, who knows what. They are saying they cannot afford a shock. Now, this means that cost of living is still the prime issue, and that will continue to drive the primary vote for all the parties. It is still the big issue and, of course, the big headline for the budget.
Yeah, that was a stat that came out of Resolve. I thought that was very telling, Dennis. It's now 55%, so a clear majority. The fridge breaks down, a car needs new tyres, the sort of stuff that's expected but not necessarily anticipated. That would bring most people to the wall. I think this is the focus for the government. This is where I think the whole election will turn. Everything else will be peripheral to this. But, when you get a trend that looks like minority government now for a number of months, when you get the coalition ahead for 6 on primary, you've got a lot then resting on the Treasurer's shoulders, given this budget's likely to be the last one we have before the next federal election. He was out today talking about the deteriorating global economic outlook. When you and I started, when I started in politics, you were there before me, all those years ago in the late 90s, you used to get a bump out of a budget. You might have got a bump a few years after that, at least in the Howard era, but the bump never lasted. I don't think you even get a bump these days. What do you think's the task for Chalmers?
Well, I think that Jim Chalmers really needs to take a leaf out of Peter Costello's first budget in the Howard government, because that got a bump, but it wasn't a sugar hit. It was actually the electorate saying, we understand you have to deliver a tougher budget. And while Jim Chalmers is saying things like, we're going to change the growth forecast, clearly there is more bad news coming. He's still saying that there will be a surplus. And he's trying to say that it's more nuanced, the response. He is saying there'll be cost of living, but he keeps saying it won't be that pushes up inflation. What he's saying is that he's trying to produce another surplus to try and keep the pressure on keeping debt down and keeping inflation down, rather than some sort of a cash splash or giveaway, which gives you a sugar hit. I think that Jim Chalmers is in a very difficult position. He has a Prime Minister who is saying he wants to relieve cost of living pressure. Cost of living is the most immediate danger to voters. The electorate has changed, the demographics have changed. And so Jim Chalmers is trying to walk a tightrope between trying to say, I do want to produce a responsible economic budget, just not probably as tough as Peter Costello's first, but one which people can appreciate is for the longer term, and also trying to say, oh, yes, we're going to try and have relief for cost of living. I think this is a real test for Jim Chalmers as Treasurer, and we've seen Treasurers in the past stand up to Prime Ministers and say, this is my budget and this is the way we are going to do it. I think it'll be a big test for Jim Chalmers, and I don't think it's going to be the last budget before the election. I think Anthony Albanese has already flagged a March budget next year.
We will see on that score. Talk to me about, this has never happened before. I don't even know if it's constitutional. But in the Melbourne seat of Higgins, we've got two candidates putting their hand up to run together as independents. They reckon they can job share the role part-time, week on, week off. One's a former staffer lawyer, Lucy Bradlow. The other's a finance executive, Bronwyn Bock. Give me a break, Dennis.
Yeah, well, tell them they're dreaming. Look, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but I can see so many difficulties here on the idea that somehow an electorate would be able to vote for and elect two people as one representative. They're not Siamese twins. I don't know how they're going to do this, because there are so many areas where it comes down to an individual MP. It also comes down, what if one of them is found to be in breach of one of the constitutional measures, say citizenship? Does that mean both of them then are ousted? What if they both show up in Parliament on the same day to vote when they can only cast one vote? Look, it's also been floated in the UK. It was knocked out by the High Court because it was just seemed to be too hard, unconstitutional, and a matter for the Parliament to decide on legislation before somebody tried to try and force the Electoral Commission to allow such a bizarre idea. It's not a bad idea to have, the amount of work that MPs have to do shared about, but you can't cut an MP in half. So much of this relies on individual judgment and individual votes. I just can't see it working at all.
It's a PR stunt. That's what I reckon it is, Dennis.